Hey guys, Mr. T here. I am sitting in the childcare section at my church. Oh, this reclines. Oh, it's so nice. So, I'm sitting here at my church, and I thought, I got here super early like I always do. I'm like 45 minutes early. So I figured, why not film another episode of Mobile America? So, today's episode goes with our last video on the legislative branch, and this is part 2 of our 3-part, 3-branch series. So, our first branch of the United States government, like I said in our last video, is the legislative branch, or Congress, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives. Our second branch, as stated in the Constitution, is the executive branch, which is the president. So, a couple things. So, first off, I want to get into what you have to do to become president, or not what you have to do, what qualifications you need to become president. There's 3 specific ones. One doesn't really apply to us anymore, and even when I did research on it, the research was inconclusive, but that basically, it states in the Constitution, you have to be a citizen of the United States for 14 years, okay? Like I said, when I did my research, a lot of inconclusiveness, couldn't really find out why they put that in there. I'm guessing it's because back when our country was first created, and we were colonists, and a lot of people came from, other colonies and things like that, we didn't have, people born in the United States. So that's why. Now, back to the other 2, and that one will make more sense why that one doesn't really fit once I say the other 2. The first of the other 2, the first one is you have to be 35 years old, okay? You have to be 35, at least 35 years old. The youngest president we've ever had, I always get it mixed up. It's either Teddy Roosevelt or JFK. I think it was JFK, but they were early 40s. That was the youngest president we've ever had, okay? Now, second thing is you have to be a natural born citizen. A lot of people say you have to be born in the United States. However, the wording says naturalized or natural born U.S. citizen. Now, that is up for debate. Does that mean you actually have to be born inside the United States, or does that just mean that when you're born you have to be a United States citizen? So if you're born in another country, but one or both of your parents is a citizen, and then you instantly get citizenship when you're born, does it mean that? Now, every president we've ever had has been born inside the United States or in the colonies, or what would become the United States. So we've never had the issue arise of, does it mean physically born in the U.S. or born to U.S. parents? Now, it probably will come up eventually. It just hasn't come up in a Supreme Court case yet. Now, getting into what the president does. President has 2 major functions. The first is he signs bills into law. So basically, like we learned in the legislative branch, how a bill, goes through that part of the branch, or that branch. After it goes through the legislative, it goes to the president or the executive branch, and he signs it into law, or he says nope, and then it goes back to the legislative branch. That's a whole nother story. The second major thing the president does is he's the commander-in-chief of the military. Now, the president doesn't have to serve a day in the military. Once he's elected, he's considered commander-in-chief. That means he could place generals, move military assets. He's in charge. A couple final things the president does, and he needs congressional approval, so he can do them, but Congress needs to okay it, is make treaties. He can not replace senators, but if there's a vacancy in the Senate, he can choose who he wants to put in. Not the Senate directly, parts of the Senate, and a whole bunch of other little things that he can do. Things he can't do is declare war, place taxes, or things like that. A lot of misconceptions is people think that's what the president does, but he can't. That's all Congress. So I know I went a little over time. The executive branch is fairly important. I mean, he is the leader of our country, or she, depending on depending on what happens at this election, but they are the leader of our country, so they're kind of important. Now, that's all the time I got, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned next week for the judicial branch, or otherwise known as the Supreme Court and courts. So, as always, stay beautiful, Americans, and Mr. T signing off. I was going to do this, but then I realized it's an L, and I'm calling myself a loser. So, Mr. T signing off. Stay beautiful, Americans.